The late afternoon light spilled through my kitchen window, soft and golden, catching the edges of the crystal glasses I'd lined up along the counter. The dining table, rarely used, was dressed in white linen with a centerpiece of fresh lilies and roses I'd splurged on from the florist downtown. Their scent filled the air, subtle but warm, the kind of detail I hoped my mother might notice. In the corner, boxes from the catering company waited to be unpacked. The menu had taken me weeks to finalize each dish chosen for someone specific. Chicken parmesan for Mom, lasagna for Dad, grilled salmon for Haley, steak for Colin. I'd even ordered a triple-layer chocolate cake that cost more than my entire weekly grocery budget. I moved from room to room, straightening chairs, adjusting picture frames, running a cloth over already spotless counters. My little house, modest but tidy, felt almost grand today. It had to. We hadn't all been together in months, and I wanted tonight to be a reminder to them and to myself that we were still a family. The guest list was just us. No friends, no colleagues. I'd never liked big crowds, and my family always said they understood that. A small, private evening meant less noise, more space for real conversation. At least, that's what I told myself. In the quiet, I caught my reflection in the living room mirror. My hair was pulled back neatly, my sweater a deep green that brought out my eyes. Not glamorous, but presentable. I smiled, imagining the warmth of seeing them all walk through the door, the clink of glasses, the sound of laughter I believed would be shared with me, not at my expense. I checked my phone for the delivery confirmation. Everything was on schedule for Saturday afternoon, hours before the 5 p.m.'s arrival time I'd given them. I pictured us around this very table, plates full, wine glasses catching the light, my parents telling stories from when we were kids, my siblings teasing me in the harmless way families do. The image made me pause, a flicker of unease stirring in my chest for reasons I couldn't name. I brushed it aside and went back to arranging the silverware, determined to make every detail perfect. Somewhere, in the back of my mind, I believed that if everything looked right, maybe everything else would be too. It was close to midnight when I finally sat down on the couch, a mug of tea cooling between my hands. The house was quiet, the table still set, the scent of flowers lingering in the air. I opened my laptop intending to check a few work emails before heading to bed. Nothing more. That's when I saw an unread message in my inbox from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was short, almost plain for Marceline. For a moment, I hovered over the trash icon. Spam. I thought. But there was something about the simplicity of it, the deliberate way my name was typed out. That made me hesitate. My fingers tapped the trackpad, and the email opened. There were only 2 lines. Watch this video and find out how your family really treats you. No greeting, no signature. Just a single video file attached. My pulse quickened. I stared at the attachment, my cursor hovering over the play button. A dozen reasons not to click it ran through my mind viruses. Scams, bad jokes, but curiosity had already taken root. I clicked. The video player opened, the image grainy. Colors muted. It took several seconds for the scene to sharpen, and with each pixel that resolved, an uneasy heaviness settled in my chest. I recognized the kitchen first, bright cabinets and the scuffed wooden table at my sister's apartment. Around it sat my parents, Haley and Colin, wine glasses and beer bottles scattered between them. Their faces were flushed, their voices overlapping in drunken ease. I leaned closer, my hand tightening around the mug until it ached. The sound was low at first, then grew clearer as someone adjusted the camera angle. I could make out my mother's voice, light and casual, just before she took a sip of wine. We only really like Marceline when she sends us money. The words seemed to hang in the air, suspended between the screen and my ears, impossible to pull back. I didn't move, didn't breathe. As my father lifted his bottle in a mock toast and answered her. My father's laugh followed his toast, deep and careless, as if my life had been reduced to a private joke they'd shared 1,000 times before. "Yeah," he said, "the more money she sends, the more we like her." They all laughed loud, unrestrained. The kind of laughter that comes when there's no thought of consequence. Haley leaned back in her chair, wiping at the corners of her eyes. "Oh my God." "You're terrible," she said between giggles. "But seriously, it's so funny watching her try to dress up for things. She has zero taste. She looks pathetic in those outfits she picks out." My gaze dropped involuntarily to the sweater I was wearing, the one I'd chosen so carefully for tomorrow. Colin shook his head, grinning. "And I can't believe she's having her birthday at home instead of taking us somewhere nice. What's the point of having money if you don't spend it on us? She's probably just too afraid of big crowds," Haley added with a smirk. More laughter. Then Colin shrugged. "The best part is we don't even have to give her expensive gifts." "Honestly, I don't want to give her anything." Haley jumped in eagerly. "Right. She gives us way too little anyway. All she covers is rent and maybe throws me 100 or 2 extra. It's not enough." I felt my stomach twist. I sent her nearly 1,000 every month, on top of her rent. My mother nodded, as though approving a business plan. "We need to figure out how to hint she should take better care of her family. Make her feel guilty about not doing enough." And then my father sealed it. He raised his bottle once more, eyes glinting, to our little ATM. The clink of glass rang in my ears. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until the mug slipped from my grip and hit the rug with a dull thud. I sat frozen, the word echoing again and again, until the video finally ended and the screen went black, leaving only my reflection staring back at me. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the blank screen, the word ATM ricocheting inside my head. The ache in my chest was sharp, but it wasn't the familiar, dull hurt I'd learned to live with. This was cleaner, hotter anger that cut through the fog of years. I thought about the teenage shifts at the diner while my friends went to football games, the scholarships I fought for so my parents wouldn't have to pay a cent for my education, the freelance projects I took on instead of going to parties, every rent payment, every emergency transfer, every time I said no to something I wanted because they needed more. And for what? So they could toast to how much they liked me when the checks cleared. Confrontation would give them the stage. Let them twist my reaction into proof that I was overreacting. No silence would be louder. I opened my travel browser and typed one word, Hawaii. Flights left at 4 a.m., the morning of my birthday. Perfect. I booked the most expensive penthouse suite I could find in Honolulu, the kind of place I'd never have allowed myself to even dream about before. Next, I called a locksmith. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I told him, change every lock. It's urgent. He took down the details without question. Finally. I pulled up the catering invoice. The total $800 flashed on the screen. I called the restaurant, confirmed the order, then changed the delivery address to the downtown homeless shelter. The coordinator on the other end sounded surprised, then grateful. I ended the call and sat back, feeling the faintest trace of something I hadn't felt in years, satisfaction. They'd show up expecting a celebration, but the door would be locked, the food gone, and I'd be thousands of miles away. The plan settled over me like armor, each step a quiet severing of the ties they'd wrapped so tightly around my life. The alarm went off at 2 a.m, though I'd barely slept. My suitcase was already by the door, packed with clothes I'd chosen for no one's approval but my own. I dressed quickly, pulled my hair into a loose knot, and slipped out into the dark. Quiet street. The Uber driver didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. The ride to the airport was silent except for the occasional turn signal and the hum of tires on pavement. By 4 o'clock, I was at the gate, boarding pass in hand, and for the first time in years, I was going somewhere without carrying someone else's weight. The flight was long, but strangely calm. I watched movies, sipped bad coffee, and let the steady roar of the engines drown out every lingering echo of their voices from that video. When we landed, warm Hawaiian air wrapped around me like something I didn't know I'd been missing. By the time I checked into the penthouse suite, the afternoon sun had begun its slow drop toward the ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the view like a living painting, but my attention kept drifting to the phone in my bag. I knew what time it was back home. 5 o'clock. The first call came from my mother, her name lighting up the screen. Then my father, then Haley, then Colin, one after another. Relentless. The vibration on the nightstand seemed almost alive, rattling against the wood. I let each call go to voicemail. When the ringing finally stopped, the text messages began. "We're here. Where are you? This isn't funny. Answer us. We're waiting outside." I scrolled through them slowly, imagining them standing on my porch, confusion turning to irritation, irritation to panic. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and then I attached the video their own words, their own laughter, and typed only one sentence: "Away from the toxic family." I hit send. For a moment, I watched the little delivered icon appear, knowing the message had landed in all the places that mattered. Then I powered the phone off completely and set it aside. The silence that followed was absolute, and I let it carry me into the next breath as I stepped out onto the balcony, the ocean stretching endlessly before me. The first morning in Honolulu, I woke to the sound of waves instead of my phone buzzing with another request for money. I lay in bed for a long time, just listening, letting the absence of demands sink into my bones. It felt unnatural at first, as if I'd forgotten to do something urgent. I filled my days with everything I used to tell myself I couldn't afford, not because I didn't have the money, but because I didn't believe I was worth spending it on. I ate breakfast on the terrace with the ocean stretching out in front of me, ordered room service just because I felt like it, and wandered through boutiques without checking price tags. By the third day, my skin was warm from the sun. My hair smelled faintly of salt water, and I'd stopped checking the time. I took long walks on the beach, let the waves catch my ankles, and let go of the voice in my head that measured every choice by how it might affect someone else. Evenings were slower. I'd sit in the hotel lounge with a glass of wine, watching strangers laugh and talk without thinking of the next bill I had to cover for someone else. For the first time in years, I didn't feel tethered to anyone's expectations. Still, the disbelief lingered. It was strange to realize I could go an entire day without a single interaction with my family and not only survive but feel lighter for it. By the 6th day, that strangeness had shifted into something sturdier. The constant hum of guilt that had lived under my skin for decades was quiet. In its place was a calm I didn't know how to name yet, but I knew I wanted to keep it. When I finally powered my phone back on, it was only to see who, if anyone, could still reach me. That was when I saw her message. Back home, I was still unpacking when a message from an unfamiliar number appeared. "Hi, Marceline. It's Elena. Can we meet just the two of us? It's important." I'd always liked Elena Collins' girlfriend, though we'd never been especially close. Something in her tone made me agree without hesitation. We settled on a quiet cafe downtown the next afternoon. She arrived looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her, scanning the room before sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice low. I nodded, waiting, her hands curled around her coffee cup. "I'm the one who sent you that video." For a second, I just stared at her. "You," she nodded, "that night. I was at Haley's place. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, they were all talking about you laughing, calling you an ATM, making fun of your clothes. I started recording on my phone because I knew you'd never believe it otherwise. The memory of that grainy footage tightened my chest. Why, anonymously, I didn't want Colin to know, but after you cut them off, I started seeing him for what he really is. He didn't care about you losing contact. He only cared that his rent wasn't being paid anymore. So, I broke up with him. I felt a surge of unexpected gratitude. You didn't have to tell me this. But I'm glad you did. She hesitated before leaning closer. There's something else. They're angry. Marceline, I've heard them talking about ways to shame you publicly posting things online, twisting the story so you look like the selfish one. They think if enough people believe it, you'll have to come back to defend yourself. The air between us seemed to sharpen. Thank you for warning me, I said, steadying my voice. I'll be ready for whatever they try. And for the first time since this all began, I knew I meant it. Elena's warning proved true within a week, the first time I saw them outside my office. I thought it was a coincidence. My parents stood near the entrance, pretending to look at their phones. But when I walked past without acknowledging them, my mother called out, voice trembling just enough to sound pitiable, Marceline, please, just 5 minutes. I didn't stop. Security caught the exchange and escorted me inside, their eyes following me all the way to the elevators. Then came the messages through mutual friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly checking in, asking if I'd really abandoned my family. It was always the same story they were struggling. They didn't understand why I'd cut them off. They just wanted to talk. The guilt was neatly packaged, designed to slip past my defenses. When that didn't work, they got bolder. My bank called to alert me to multiple failed attempts to log into my accounts. The representative confirmed the attempts came from my hometown. I changed every password, set up new security questions, and added two-factor authentication. The thought of them trying to get into my accounts made my skin crawl. One afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw Haley leaning against the hood of a car across the street. She didn't say anything, just smirked, as if daring me to approach. I walked to my own car without looking her way, heart pounding but steps steady. After that, security insisted on walking me out most evenings. At first, I resisted. Then I realized it wasn't about fear, it was about refusing to give them any opening to twist the narrative, no matter how many tactics they tried. I didn't respond. I wouldn't give them the argument they wanted, the chance to paint me as the aggressor. I went home each night to a locked door and the silence I'd fought for, holding on to it like the most valuable thing I'd ever owned. Elena's warning proved true faster than I expected. Within a week, they were waiting outside my office building, first my mother, then all of them together. They would linger near the parking lot, arms crossed, eyes scanning every person who came out. When I walked past without acknowledging them, the calls and texts from mutual friends started. Your family is worried about you. They say you've cut them off for no reason. The messages were always laced with judgment, as if I owed an explanation to anyone who asked. Then came the bank alerts. Unsuccessful login attempts on my checking account, my savings, even my retirement fund. I changed every password, added extra verification. And still, the notifications kept coming. They were desperate enough to try prying into every corner of my life, but too careless to succeed. One afternoon, as I left the building, my father stepped directly into my path. We need to talk, he said. His tone caught somewhere between pleading and command. Before I could respond, security intervened, guiding me past him and into the waiting car. It wasn't the first time that week they'd had to escort me. The effort they poured into chasing me was almost impressive. In a grim way, they'd never shown that kind of persistence when it came to anything else, only when there was money involved. I stayed silent through all of it. No texts, no calls, no public defense. The truth didn't need defending, and I wasn't going to step back into their arena just so they could twist my words. Each failed attempt on their part only solidified something inside me. Whatever they were planning next, I was determined to be ready.